So I got this cool idea from watching the movie Interstellar, and assuming that the people watching this video have seen that movie, the scene where they land on that planet and it's like all water, but they're like standing on something like the surface of the planet. I was thinking if you did that same thing with Earth, let's say that there's no longer any fault shifts, or volcanoes, or like things hitting the planet, just a lame planet pretty much. And all of the ground, all of the mountains crumbled to the seas, and pretty much just everything just eroded out into the ocean and became like a flat sphere. How deep would the water be on the surface of the planet? And you take all the creatures out of the ocean. Let's say the planet was just natural, like there aren't buildings and shit on the surface. So it's a hypothetical question, but it's a cool, I don't know, it's just one of those things that I really wish I knew the answer to, and maybe somebody could figure that out. You smooth out all the dirt on the planet, maybe a machine out in space, a satellite, can tell the difference between dirt and rock, like depict everything about the planet and calculate in exactly how much of each thing there is, how much of it's vegetation, how much of it's buildings and man-made shit, how much of it's water. You need to know how much water there is on the planet and how much dirt there is. All of that's the same amount of water that's on the planet. You take all of the same amount of water, and the same amount of dirt, smooth out the dirt, that's it. Take out all the buildings, the creatures. That'd be another cool question, actually, is if you took all the boats off the surface of the planet and all the creatures out of the ocean so that it's nothing but water, just water, no creatures, no boats, like making the water like go up on the shores, all that stuff just disappears out of the water all at once. And you're not standing on the shore because, all the water would splash up and it would cause a huge splashing. But let's say you're a camera angle, like like you're watching from a drone. You're watching that. Just all that stuff disappears out of the ocean all at once, and you're like really high up at the beach watching. After it all settles down, how far out would the water, how much shallower would the water be if you took out all the creatures out of it and all the boats out of it and all the things that aren't water? Another cool question would be, let's say all the ocean water is in the same area as it is now, but the bottom of the ocean is all averaged out now, so that if you stepped up to the edge of the beach, the water is the same depth right when you step into the water as it is everywhere else in the water. So the Marianas Trench coming up would make the water everywhere else deeper, and the beaches going down would make the deeper water shallower. So you take the same area exactly that all the beach lines are, and all the same exact amount of water that the ocean is, and you just average out the bottom of the ocean. How deep would that be? Now, I have no idea how deep the water would be encompassing the surface of the planet. And that's the question that I really wish I knew the answer to. That'd be cool. Some machine might be able to figure that one out. But I think I do have an idea how deep the water would be if it were all in the same area of the ocean and averaged out. And if anybody cares, if anybody even made it along this far in the video, I'd like to hear your guesses on how deep the water would be. But I would guess the water would be anywhere from a mile and a half, somewhere between a mile and a half and a mile and a quarter deep, everywhere. I couldn't imagine it would be very far from that deep. So, yeah, the internet is really fucking cool because it's like a form of telepathy for mankind, like a hive mind. Like I can just share like anything I want, any thought that I want with just anyone in the world that isn't living in poverty. Wow, I remember the world before the internet. I was like 8 years old. Just it was like the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like when you remember when the NES came out, there was this one Christmas, boom, everyone had the fucking Nintendo Entertainment System, and it was just the coolest thing. That's how the internet was. It was just everyone had a computer, and that was the thing to do when hanging out with friends, is just go on the internet and see what's what. And it changed the world. I remember the internet, there was a lot more privacy before cell phones and the internet. Like, one of my favorite things about before the internet was software piracy. Any program, I never paid for a single video game or sound program. All they could do was beg that you don't, like, share software. You didn't have to go online and register it like you do now for everything. Like, I bought Reason 4, and it was like $300 or something. And I registered it on this computer, and then the computer fucking broke. And then I couldn't reinstall it on another computer, even though I'd paid for it. It was registered to that computer. And it wouldn't let me fucking install it because it was registered to another computer. So I like the old way, even though I can understand why companies are cracking down on shit like that. The internet, like, they can. But the music industry, another thing that most things I like about the internet, like there aren't like Sam Goodies and shit anymore where you buy music, because you can just look up any song you want on the internet. You can burn any song you want to your playlist with like MP3 Rocket or some damn thing. So the internet is a really sharp double-edged sword. And people that were born, it was probably like how old people feel, like when the automobiles started to come out. Like the old man in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, when he gets out of prison and he's like, I saw an automobile once when I was a kid, now they're everywhere. That's kind of like somebody like me who is just, automobiles have always been around. I wouldn't know anything of that, but I would know when the internet came out, the way the world was before that. But now, like, kids that are born into a world, they know nothing of a world without internet. I could kind of feel like that old man in the Shawshank Redemption in that sense, but with a different thing, with the internet instead of cars. Cell phones, I remember I was probably like 12 before everybody started having cell phones. No, I was older than that. Cell phones weren't around until I was like, didn't start seeing people with cell phones somewhere in my teens, mid to late teens, 15 maybe. And then it became a must. Cars became a must. Like, you pretty much can't operate in the real world without an automobile. You can't go without the internet, cars, cell phones. There's just all these electronic apparatuses that we need to extend into the real world with now, that before we have like all these machines that do everything for us. It's fucking weird. It's like humans are getting lazier and they're accomplishing more by having like, it's like people are more out of shape than they've ever been, I think. I was talking to my friend Dame, who's like, he's at least 10 years younger than I am. Somewhere between 10 and 15 years younger than I am. He's like 12 or 13 years younger. And I remember when I was in school, they used to have us run the mile, and it mattered how fast you ran it. And they had playgrounds, recess, they let you out and you play on these playgrounds, and the playgrounds meant business. They weren't these shitty little metal playgrounds. They were made out of wood, and some of them were like 2 stories tall. Playgrounds have just, the safety has just gone way up. It's like ridiculous. The swings used to be like really tall on the playgrounds when I was a kid. Now, Damien, he said that PE, like a lot of people didn't even run or do anything in PE. They don't have dodgeball. They have cops walking the halls. Like when I was, and I was talking to him about, he was like, yeah, someone got a assault for fighting in my school because they have cops that monitor the hallways now after the school shootings and shit. And I was like, shit, when I was in school, there was a fight. 2 people would take it out, usually right there in the hallway. Everyone would watch, and then the fight would end, and then everyone would just carry on. Maybe somebody would get called to the office and talk to the principal. Now it's like if you get in a fight, if you hit someone, you can get assault and have to go on probation. There's another son of a bitch, probation. I wonder how long that's been around. Just imagine humanity before probation was a thing. Like, there was probably a point when people were just, there was less they could do, like less freedom they had. But, like, you know, they didn't have cell phones and cars and machines doing stuff for them. But in a sense, like, the simplicity of the way the world was a lot more free in those aspects. Because now it's just like, just everything is like complexified. We've complexified the rules to ridiculous amounts, it seems like now, in our society. People don't even have the freedom to put what they choose to put in their own bodies without like someone up their ass about it and making you like, oh, you're doing cocaine or you're eating mushrooms that grow naturally out of the ground. You're gonna have to go on probation for a year for that. It's like, what? Like, who came up with that fucking system? Probation. They'll throw you in a jail cell if you don't pass UAs. You have to stand there in front of somebody and pee in front of them. It's like you don't have your own time. It's like, I could see that if, yeah, doing drugs on a job for somebody working for a company, all right. But if, you know, I don't come to work on all fucked up, I should be able to go home and during my time and do whatever I want. But no, you don't have the freedom at any point in time to put whatever you want into your own body. And that's just one of the many things, like, that I've seen growing up that, like, I've grown disgust for the way the world has gone. Now I can see why old people are usually, like, kind of, what's the word? They're just, like, kind of disgusted and they have an attitude about things. And can kind of see why, because like the more things I see change, I don't like the way that they change. The way that they change a lot of times. But yeah, I've said more than I thought I was gonna say. I guess what I really wanted. I guess I covered the three things that I wanted to speak of, and that was the ocean depth around. You take the same amount of water that the Earth has and the same amount of dirt, smooth it out. How deep would the water be covering the surface of the Earth? If you took all the animals and boats off the surface of the planet, or off the surface, out of the water, so there's just water, nothing but water, and the shores and the depth of the ocean is exactly the same. Everything is the same, except for you take everything out of the water that's not water. The trash, the boats, the animals, like how cataclysmic would it be when the water, just all that stuff disappeared out of it at once in the snap of a finger? And then once it all settled, how far down would the water be? Like how far out would the shores go that don't have water on them anymore? And then the third one, which I also covered, if the shores were like everywhere where there's beach, where the water touches up to the beach, if you just froze that so that you like drew a line around where the water is, like you freeze frame it where all the water is, draw a line right up on the edge of the water everywhere, and then just make all like the beach walls straight down and average out the bottom of the ocean. Like you don't pave it flat, you don't pour more dirt into it or anything, you just take what's down there and you average it out so it's perfectly flat. How deep would that be? And that I want to hear people's guess on how deep the water would be if it were encompassing the whole surface of the planet. I have no idea. And that's the one I'd like to know the most, too. In that hypothetical that would never happen. And then the other one, I do have an idea, and I think it would be 1.5 miles to somewhere between 1.5 miles and 1.25 miles. All right, that's all I had to say.